Welcome to episode 753 of the Aussie Tech Heads. I'm Jason Oakley. This is Will Tompkinson. Hey, Will.
Hey, mate.
How's things going? You're looking a bit different there.
Oh, yeah, it's like I just turned my room around. My desk's in the same spot. I just rotated the whole room.
Can you just like right click on it and hit rotate 90 degrees, or is it a bit more difficult?
I wish it was that simple. No, I had to get a second computer in here, so I had to completely shuffle everything around. And I thought, well, while I'm at it, I might as well open the room up so I can use the VR.
Yep.
And then that presented other issues. Like now I don't have my green screen, so I've got to figure that out.
Because it's over there on the wall.
Yeah, it's the wall's green over there, so that's useful. So I thought I'd have that, and I'll have one of the Rift sensors back there on that corner, so I can see behind, which means I can like pull out the bow and arrow and stuff. And
Sweet. What's some of your favorite games now?
It broke, so I can't do that now.
Oh.
They're interesting though.
Yep.
They literally just use a standard USB 3 connector on them.
Yep.
And they're basically, there's not a lot to them. They're basically a normal camera. They've just got an infrared filter on the lens. That's pretty much all they are. There's nothing special about them except this one doesn't work now.
Yeah, they should be. Don't they send out infrared to your headset?
No,
and
the
controllers.
All the way around. The Rift headset, which is over here.
Or is the controller that sends out the infrared?
Yeah, there's actually behind this panel, there's actually 16 infrared LEDs.
Right.
And it knows where you are, but it also uses, because your body puts off a certain amount of infrared as well, so it can also determine where you are in relation to everything else, and the handsets, the controllers do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a relatively simple idea, but it seems to be worked pretty well, except now it's broken. I haven't well, the other reason I haven't used it is because I switched to Linux. Yes.
They said it would never happen.
This episode is brought to you by Linux.
Which one? Which Linux?
So, I've been a big fan of like Mint. I've been a big fan of Mint for a while, but they seem to have gone stagnant in their sort of development, even though they won Linux of the Year last year.
Mm.
But I discovered one called Popos. Pop OS. Incredibly user friendly, like ridiculously Windows user friendly.
Yep.
It's insanely fast. It runs so far, even though. So Steam's got a compatibility mode where it'll try to automatically load stuff in, basically a Windows emulator like Wine, although it uses its own variant of that. And it'll try and load stuff up and run it natively if it can. Now, there are some Steam games that are actually Linux, have been, like Valheim, for example, is a native Linux game. It'll install a native Linux version. But the ones that don't, it tries to emulate Windows to run them. I haven't had one not work yet.
Wow. It says a lot.
Every application I use, my OBS, my Discord, my let me have a quick look.
Browsers.
All my browsers, Firefox, Chrome, Opera.
They're all synced to your passwords.
They'll work the way they're expected to. Audacity. Yep. See, Audacity is another one that's actually not Linux native, but works perfectly fine. Because even if you try to install a Windows program, even if it's an exe file, like I did with Live for Speed, which is a game I play. It's purely Windows. It's an exe file. You click on it and it runs.
Yep.
And one goes, hey, I know what that file does. And it handles it and runs it.
You were running GTA V the other day,
GTA 5, yeah.
It goes on it?
It has no problem at all. And there's other stuff I'm running as well. And everything I'm running runs at the very least the same as Windows. But pretty much everything I run runs noticeably better. Like, I'm not talking a little bit. I'm talking a lot better. Stranded Deep was one example of that. And another game called Wreckfest, where you have a lot of AI involved. The game tends to slow down, gets a bit framey. Not under Linux, not under this Pop OS.
And didn't you say you
so
could
far.
see further with less fog in Valheim and stuff?
In Valheim, without installing the HD pack, I basically had HD graphics.
Nice.
Like I had better clarity. I had higher gamma. I had a higher frame rate. Like I think I was getting, I can't remember exactly what the numbers are, but I think in Windows I was getting something like 50 to 60 frames. In this I'm getting like
I think it was 170
or something. Yeah. Like it's ridiculous. Minecraft, like flying normally would, you know, be a little bit, I wouldn't say kill your CPU, but like your GPU, but like it would drop you down to 80 or 90 frames.
Yep.
I'm well over 250 frames
Wow.
flying. Yeah. But even things like OBS, which is what we're recording this on, it's running using about as much system resources as you used under Windows. All the browsers, you don't even have memory leak under Chrome, which is unheard of under Windows. You know, it's ridiculous. Like everything just works. I've got a USB mixer that I thought was going to give me grief. Worked perfectly fine. My webcam.
And the best thing, Windows, Microsoft is not going to overwrite your drivers with shitty ones anymore.
Exactly, and that was ultimately my main reason for doing it, because I was sick of spending 3 weeks fixing my computer and using it for a week before Microsoft did something to it.
Even if you blocked all the updates and disabled them updates and everything.
Exactly. But it has both the Pop Store, which is what they use, which uses the Flatpak files, which is a new way of doing easy installs.
Yep.
It also supports the Ubuntu Snap Store, which is a similar process, but between Snap and Pop, they don't need a Crackle one, but between Snap and Pop, there's like 99% of the programs you could ever want natively install onto it.
Isn't Crackle a video streaming service?
Yeah, I think it is actually.
You can use that. There you go.
But if there is a particular program that doesn't install, you just download the Windows version of it and install it. Like it's fine.
So you got the best of all worlds, haven't you?
You know, DOSBox runs natively on it, so you can run all your DOS games by default without having to do anything. Like, you know,
I'm going to have to live USB boot this and try it out on mine.
And that was the other thing. I ran it off the live USB key, and it ran almost as fast as it does once it's installed.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. So yeah, I absolutely love it.
I still got a whole SSD in there that's got my old Windows 10 installed, and I haven't, after I put on 11, I haven't gone back to it, so I can just wipe that off and dual boot even at the very least.
Well, I'm running this on my M2 drive, and it's like even recording in 1080 like I am now, and having everything open with Zoom and doing all that stuff, and it's using like 10% of my drive's bandwidth. Like it's
never seen that before.
So, and I haven't even got them rated now. I've got because I had 2 identical drives, and they were supposedly striped before, although I don't think they were. I think they were actually mirrored. Sorry, they were supposed to be mirrored before, but I think they're actually striped. So I've got an extra drive now because Linux does its automatic own backup thing. You don't need to worry about it. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so fast. Launching applications, like launching Valheim before with all the mods we had.
Yeah.
You know, was a 30 second, 45 second process.
Yeah.
It's like 6-7 seconds now.
Wow.
It's long. Like I go.
So you're a Linux convert.
I go launch. And then by the time I put my headset on, I sit down in front of my keyboard. It's there. I'm like,
there.
So for now, at least, even as I said, even though Mint for the second year in a row ran one best Linux operating system, I did put a live install of Mint on prior to this and tried it for a while. I almost went with it, but then I discovered Pop, and yeah.
Yeah, how did you come across Pop? I've never heard of it before.
No, I'd never heard of it either.
And it's supposed to be like natively super secure and stuff too, isn't it?
Well, by default, it automatically runs. What's that encryption? Like, there's a normal format, then there's a format with encryption command. It like automatically does that. Automatically encrypts everything. Like, I didn't do that part of it. You can if you want. It's it's very powerful. It's based loosely on Ubuntu, but it's almost effectively written from the ground up.
Yep.
It has its own. Basically,
and they have their own hardware too, don't they?
They actually, well, they started. Pop actually started as a hardware supplier, hardware to manufacturer, and they wanted to be like Apple in some regards that when they delivered a system, it was an end-to-end solution, and that software ran on that hardware. And then it got to the point they're like, okay, well, we need to expand our range. So instead of making, okay, you can only run this graphics card, you can only run this CPU, you can only run this memory, then well, why don't we just basically use Linux for that part of it, because it's handled, that's sorted.
Yep.
And then we'll build the OS away to an operating system that we want to use.
Yep.
And that's part of their thing. It's continually updated because they wanted to be a certain way and do a certain thing.
Apparently, their hardware is like super tuned for the OS too. If you bought a computer from them and go even faster still.
Yeah, and it's actually really well priced. I was having a look at some of their systems. Like, you can get a really, really high end. Oh, and this is the other reason they sort of come across. It's oriented more at a gaming configuration rather than a not, but that only has its benefits insofar as it's speed optimized and things like that. So that's not a negative, but their systems are really, really affordable for what they actually are. They're quite well done. The other thing that's interesting, and not many Linux variants do this. Okay, it natively supports AMD and NVIDIA because you expect it to do that. But it also supports Intel and having a complete blank. It's AMD and like ATI, isn't it?
Yep.
Radeon and stuff. Yeah, so that's natively supported, but they also support Intel and NVIDIA platforms, which isn't generally supported so much under Linux. Like, that's a bit more of a rare thing because NVIDIA won't natively won't release their drivers because they're like that, and Intel aren't fans of doing that either. But apparently they actually sell Intel systems, so they must have something figured out.
Yeah.
But no, it's great, and yeah, it's small, it's lightweight, it's fast, it's stable, it's easy to use. The actual infrastructure and back end is familiar enough that it doesn't take you long to figure it out. It's not like ripping off Windows or anything like that, but it's to the point where you can very, very quickly figure out. Like under Mint,
it's close enough.
Under Linux Mint, I used it for a month, and it took me almost a month to figure out how to change my backdrop. Something so simple was actually a very convoluted process. But on this one, it's right click, change desktop, done. Like, it's it's
how
there.
It should be.
So no, look, if you are thinking about, you don't want to go to 11, or you want to, I'm actually running this on some older systems to try it out. I'm running them on some Intel Atom dual core 1.9 megahertz NUCs with 4 gig of RAM, and it's blindingly fast. It's way fast. I can't remember the version I had on there. PUP, I think it was. It's supposed to be a lightweight one, specifically designed for low-end systems.
So you went from PUP to PIP, POP to POP.
PUP to POP. And this is heaps faster. So far at least. I've had it on for a couple of weeks, and I can't fault it at all. The only thing...
I'll give it a go this weekend.
And it's not really its fault, it's more that I haven't figured out how to do it yet, is every time you go to install something or every time you want to do something, it asks you for your password. And that's part of this OS being very secure. Yep. But I'm sure there's a way that once you've logged in once with your password, you can not get it to do that, because it's just so frustrating. especially for the window you're doing something. The one thing that's a little bit weird and takes a bit of getting used to when you launch an application, or whatever, if you've got multiple monitors like I do, whichever monitor your mouse pointer's on is where it'll launch that window.
Yeah.
So if you've got your mouse pointer on one window and you launch an app and you launch another app on the same window, but a pop-up comes up and says, hey, enter your password or something, you won't necessarily see it because sometimes it can pop under the other thing that's there.
Mm.
So that's probably the closest thing I have to a complaint about it.
Yep. You probably disable that somewhere too.
There would be a way to do it, yeah. I haven't really looked into it yet. I've been spending the last couple of weeks setting it up and honestly expecting just super painful experience because it's Linux and that's what you expect.
Yep.
Like the other night we did a test, and just before we did the Zoom test, because obviously we knew we had the show tonight, and just before we did the Zoom test, that night, 10 minutes before I called Warlock, I had just installed OBS, I just installed Zoom, I just installed the webcam, 10 minutes before I called, and it worked flawlessly.
Yeah.
You don't expect
it's not
that.
a Linux thing.
Especially anything USB, you expect to have grief with, but I just plugged in just before I rebooted my computer before the show. I plugged in what was my external backup drive on the other system, internal backup drive, so I could copy my files across and put in my videos so I don't fill up my hard drive. And I thought it was going to give me grief as well because Linux. And plugged it in, booted it up, and it goes, hey, there's a new drive, I'll install that. Would you like to open that drive? And okay, click on it, opens. It's mapped it to a location that it can find, and it works. That's not supposed to be that easy. Or even something as simple as when you're using a program that's designed for Windows, where it uses the Windows file structure. So you C drive / Windows / desktop, whatever, however you'd have it set up. Wine emulates that desktop. So if you're installing, say I was installing Live for Speed, it wants to be installed on C drive / LFS, and then it has its subdirectories under there, which of course Linux, you don't have that. Yep. But Wine emulates it so nicely that it doesn't even know the difference. He goes, oh, you want to put it under C drive, but okay, no worries. Here, I'll create a drive for you, or create a fake drive for you, and install it to that location. And then when you go to the file manager later and you want to find it, you just type in LFS or OBS or whatever you want to type in, and it comes up under, wherever the actual location is. But that's kind of irrelevant because when you click on it, it just launches, and then when you go to load a game or load a file, it goes back to your Windows file structure again. So it knows the difference, it knows what you're trying to do. And that's always been an issue traditionally. Something like OBS, for example, when you've gone to load your photos. Yep. You go, oh crap, they're under dev SDA1. You've had to try and think about where the file location is.
Real.
Yeah, but now you go, oh, they're under C drive / pictures. There they are. Look. So yeah, no, I've become quite a fan very quickly, actually.
That's crazy cool.
Mm.
Yeah, I was thinking of putting on my server, since I've got it going in the lounge room with all the game servers, that we only really play one anymore. Pi-hole, which was made for Raspberry Pi to block ads and stuff for computers. You can just put that on any Ubuntu or other Linux server and block all the ads and stuff without having to have ad block, and then you load a page that says, oh, we can see you've got ad block installed. Click here to let us show you ads, which you don't want to do because then the whole screen just fills up with crap. I think I might set that up this weekend.
It's a really interesting concept, actually. It's really surprising the way it works.
Yeah.
Don't you just set your DNS to it, don't you? And it,
yeah.
And it does
you can set
else.
that in your modem to anytime somebody connects like they used to do, just sends the DNS queries to that server instead of through your modem and out to your ISP or whatever.
And okay, I guess it probably does technically slow it down a little bit, but it'd be so minimal you wouldn't even notice it.
Yeah, not on the home
It's not like it's
network.
passing the traffic through there. It's just pinging it to find out what it needs to do with the traffic.
Yeah.
It'd be different if you're doing it as a firewall or something like that. Then you do notice a slowdown.
Yep.
But
And because all your phones and everything will connect through, get their connect
mm,
time next time they connect to the DHCP server at home, they'll say, "Oh, we'll send the queries to that server for that as well." So everything in the house is just going to have no more ads,
mm,
and that'll make that stuff run faster because you're not waiting for this big video ad to
that's right.
preload and then start playing while you're trying. And apparently, I think they also said it can edit out the YouTube ads,
In the app.
pre rolls and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah. Or if you
Well,
just go to youtube.com,
yeah, I was gonna
doesn't
say
show
it
the
would work in
ads.
the browser because that's how AdBlock works
Mm,
effectively. It's effectively a DNS redirector as well, but it'd be interesting if it works in the app as well. Although I've
yep.
got a tablet we use a lot here for the web browser YouTube because the app one day crashed and then refused to update and it's never worked since. So we use YouTube in the browser and yeah, I did put AdBlock on it at one point, but it slowed it down so much, obviously, because it was pre-caching everything as it come in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and it wouldn't it would stop the videos on the YouTube, but it would actually like stop the video. Then you can see it's going, hey, there's supposed to be an ad here. What do I do? Oh, okay, I'll block the ad. Right. Oh, there's still a video. Okay, we'll play the video now. It's like you had a 10-second pause anyway. It's
While
like,
it's
well,
figuring out, yeah,
I
you
could
might
have
as well
just
watch
skipped the ad.
And the other thing I did over Christmas was upgrade to Google Pixel 6 phone, which I'm just loving.
Yeah,
Best phone I've had.
they're pretty well rated.
Ported across to Optus now. So got rid of my Telstar and got a little case for it. It's pretty good. It came with the super duper screen protector that stops all scratches and you can drop it and all that sort of stuff with no problems. But yeah, Google Pixel. I didn't want the Pro because I wanted to get a smaller phone because the Galaxy S20 Ultra that I've had for the last couple of years is just every time you're using it in bed to read Twitter or something, and then this hand gets a cramp in it, and you go to that one, and that one's got a cramp because it's too heavy and too fat.
And if
I
you do
just want a
fall asleep,
Pixel
you drop it on your
6.
face.
Yeah, and because I went with Telstra because they had fresh phone feeling for your account, where every year, as long as you took back your old phone in mint condition, you just get a new phone, whichever one you wanted. They just recontract you, and off you go.
Mm.
Then a year and a half ago, I said, okay, we'll do that. And they're like, no, we don't offer that anymore. This phone you're going to have for 2 years, whether you want it or not. I was like, we've just removed the main reason
The
that I
only
wanted to
reason.
stay here.
Yeah.
So I don't have any benefit staying here anymore. So I looked up Optus, and I talked to Telstra and checked the app as well. Said I had 6 months worth of payments for the phone itself. I was off the calls contract. That was
Yeah.
1 year, but the phone contract was two. So I looked it up and went in the store and confirmed with them that to pay it off was $446. But if I traded in that phone that I've now paid off, the credit I get from Optus is $440. So I'm like, why don't I just get another phone right now? So I went in and yeah, put it across, got my new phone. They've said the credit's going to be on my first account, so I've got $440 for the next 3 months of phone calls, and it's a little bit cheaper than the plan that I had with Telstra anyway. And the other problem I had with Telstra was all the flu bot spam that comes through every week. Is like, click here, you've got a new voicemail, and it goes to dodgywebsite.com to try and hack your phone and stuff. And they were just happening all the time. I even had my uncle rang me up. He's like, how do I stop this stuff? I said, I bet you're with Telstra. He goes, yeah. I said, you can't stop it. I said, my job is stopping this stuff and I can't stop it. So I said, have you got, could you change to Optus? And he's like, well, I suppose so. I said, I've got a friend who he's on Telstra and his wife's on Optus. His wife's never got one, but he's on Telstra and he gets it all the time. So I said, I think I'm going to go over to Optus and I won't have to have this problem. So I switched over, got hardly any of the spam things anymore,
Yeah, I don't get
and
them with.
better phone and
Well,
runs faster, and I love it.
I got Vodafone, and none of us who got it get any spam with that.
Yep.
And I got the Aussie broadband mobile at work, and it doesn't get spam either.
Yep. Yep.
So it's just a Telstra thing.
Yeah. So really happy with that. Got away from all of that. And this, I said, I just want a 1 year contract on this phone because I'll bring out another Pixel or something next year that I want. They're like, yep. And it was like $10 a month cheaper for a
Yeah.
1 year contract than my 2 year contract. So everything's going to be much better.
Yep.
We should probably say, oh, wait, there's nobody up
No,
there.
no,
Where's
we're
our ticker, Mr. T?
we're on budget graphics this week.
Thanks to our Patreons and that.
Yeah, Patreons and our coffees and our PayPals and our whatever else is.
Ready for another year of Aussie tech heads fun and frivolity.
Frivolity. What are you? What's his name? Out of Mash?
What's the
The
matter
past
for
Trevor
a
Mash?
dictionary?
No, what was his name? Father McKay.
Yeah.
Frivolity. Oh dear. But yeah, no, that yeah, it does. It's helpful, guys. It helps us out with our Zoom, for example, paying that off per month and all that sort of stuff. So
At least you won't need it for your Windows anymore.
Yeah, yeah. No more Windows licenses to worry about. Not that was the thing I ever worried about, so it doesn't really matter.
Who does?
But yeah, no, it's good. And actually, I forgot to mention too. I've got an older system over here that I've set up for Cam, for my son, for Minecraft and whatever. And I'm having a couple of teething problems with a couple of the games that work on mine and don't work on his. But other than that, like, the system is so much like.
But here's the thing with your kids, you can give them a computer, and with Windows, it's going to get a virus no matter what. Because
Well, yeah, but not even that. Like Minecraft, for example, before, with everything turned graphics turned right down on the minimal, no particle effects, no nothing. It was getting about 20 frames a second on a normal, just walking around. With everything turned on and graphics turned right up on full screen, he's getting about 60 to 70 frames a second now.
got to be happy with that.
So it's the same crappy 1 gig video card. It's the same old FX 850 CPU. Like, there's nothing special about it.
Yep.
But just by putting Pop on it instead of Windows on it, it's got more system resources to allocate to the game. So it's. And Live for Speed's another one. It was running at 15 to 20 frames a second on a good day. It runs at like 85 frames now.
Sweet.
So I definitely can't complain about it. But I've got a couple of teething problems with a couple of games that Windows games that it's trying to convert to Linux. On an older system, apparently there's a few things you've got to play with to get it to work. But it's it's fine.
All right, we should probably do some news.
We can do that. News.
The FTC's antitrust lawsuit against Facebook can proceed, a federal judge ruled on Tuesday, delivering a major win for the agency after its first attempt at targeting the company's alleged monopoly power was dismissed for lack of evidence. This time, however, the judge found that federal regulators had offered enough proof to argue that Facebook's acquisition strategy, particularly its takeover of Instagram and WhatsApp, is driven by a buy or bury ethos. In other words, Facebook allegedly gobbles up its competitors in order to maintain an illegal monopoly. Although the agency may well face a tall task down the road in proving its allegations, the court believes it's now cleared the pleading bar and may proceed to discovery. The FCC has now alleged enough facts to plausibly establish that Facebook exercised monopoly power in the market for personal social networking services. Federal regulators contend that Facebook acquired Instagram and WhatsApp only because the apps posed a competitive threat to the company, pointing to a 2008 email from CEO Mark Zuckerberg in which he wrote that it is better to buy than compete. Roseberg found that the FTC offers enough evidence to argue that Facebook acquired Instagram and WhatsApp in order to neutralize actual and likely future competition. In the amended complaint, FTC lawyers asked the judge for remedies, including potentially forcing Facebook to spin off Instagram and WhatsApp into separate divisions. Traditionally, winning an antitrust case is turned on proving that a company's dominance hinders competition and raises prices for consumers or limits consumers' choices.
Yes. I mean, they have a little bit of a hard case to prove with Instagram, but they can certainly prove it with just about everything else. What was the other one they did? Bloody Periscope or something. They bought it and basically shut it down, and
All right.
there's a few stuff. So I don't think I'll have too much of a hard time with that one.
No.
But I mean, it's been working for Apple for years, so
Yes. They're still buying stuff
where
up,
do you
aren't they?
where do you draw the line? And what did somebody buy? They basically bought out BlackBerry to shut them down. So.
Yeah, it's completely dead now. They've announced that.
Mm. So
Well,
who
place
knows?
companies that have Meta, Facebook has purchased, taken over.
Oh yeah,
92 of them.
it's ridiculous.
92.
And it's not like they're not even doing it
Parakeet Connect You, Friend
nicely.
Feed, Octazen, Divyshot, Friendster Patents,
Well, you
ShareGrove,
see the
Next
new
Stop, Hot Potato.
Is it Oculus or the new Facebook VR, or whatever it is? It's all powered by Meta technology.
Yeah.
So, who knows?
Beluga, Datum. Most of these I haven't even heard of. Go Walla, Caffeinated Mind, Glancy, Lightbox, Acrylic Software, Hot Studio, Sports Stream, Center, Oculus, of course.
So, the speaking of Linux Mint,
Yep.
it's reverting Firefox to Mozilla config after partnership signed.
Cool.
Mozilla and Linux Mint have signed a partnership that will see Linux distribution dump its customization of the web browser in favour of rolling out the defaults chosen by Mozilla. In the past, Linux Mint used its own default settings and configured Firefox in a specific way. Most of this configuration is abandoned to go back to Mozilla defaults, distribution founder said. Among the change will be the default start page no longer pointing to a page controlled by Mint. Search engine switching from Linux Mint search partners including Yahoo and DuckDuckGo to Mozilla search partners including Google, Amazon, Bing, DuckDuckGo, and eBay. Why don't you just leave it on DuckDuckGo and just agree that's what you're going to use?
eBay's a good search engine. That's one of my favorite.
Yeah, it's like Amazon. I was marking around, slightly off topic, I was marking around in my Chrome browser the other night to change my default search page to DuckDuckGo because Google annoys me. And there's a list of hang on, I'll see if I can manage search engines. So its default ones that you can use is Google, DuckDuckGo, Yahoo 7, Bing, Ecosia, which I've never heard of. But then all these other ones that it lets you just activate. tchannel.ch, ABN Lookup, AliExpress Shopping, Amazon, Amazon.com.au, Answers. There's literally hundreds of them. I'm like, why would anybody set any of these to their default? Facebook, Snoops, Whirlpool. Yes, because you want all these to be default search engine.
Oh, I think we mentioned Ecosia before, the search engine that plants trees. Every time you use it, they
That's
plant
right.
trees from.
The problem is their searches are garbage.
Uh,
I think it's potentially a intentional ploy so that you don't use it. Because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't come up in there. So patches from Mint upstream distributions, Debian and Ubuntu will be dropped. The relationship between Mozilla and Mint is commercial and technical with hopes that Mint users will be able to update the browser from within Firefox, similar to how Windows users do, rather than needing to use distribution package. So this comes back to the whole thing that Mint's basically becoming a mainline version of Linux, and they have to streamline some of their things.
Yep.
One of the other issues they were having is because they were using a customized version of Mozilla, and this is one of the main reasons I didn't want to use Mint, is Thunderbird, which is what I use for our email client, which is Mozilla, but it had issues with integration with it because it was a customized version of Mozilla. And Thunderbird was a little bit flaky occasionally. So that was one of the things that kind of turned me off Mint a little bit. But yeah, so basically the transition is due to happen in the new Link Mint distributions due later this week. Initially, the only noticeable difference will be the search engine will change in Firefox. We'll switch to Google, and in other browsers, Yahoo, DuckDuckGo, and Startpage will continue to pay Mint. So, so Mint's having a minor overhaul, but we'll see how they go. But I've used Mint a few times. I have it on a couple of systems. It's fine. It's having used Pop though, it's not Pop. One thing I will say, you have to make sure you do in your browsers is disable hardware acceleration, because it just does not play friendly. Completely lock my systems up. Yeah, completely locked my computer up. I'm like, what's going on? And then I discovered that it was actually Chrome freezing because of the hardware, and Firefox did it as well. Freezing and locking the system was still running. It was just locking the graphical interface up. Which you do Alt F2, which brings up your run, then press R and it reloads your graphical interfaces. So that's pretty cool.
Nice.
So if you do get a graphics glitch, it's easy to fix.
Apple has issued unusual and significant stock bonuses to some engineers in an effort to retain talent, looking to stave off defections to tech rivals such as Facebook owner Meta Platforms. Last month, the company informed some engineers in silicon design, hardware, and select software and operations groups of the out-of-cycle bonuses, which are being issued as restricted stock units according to people with knowledge. The shares vest over 4 years, providing an incentive to stay at the iPhone maker. Bonuses, which came as a surprise to those who received them, have ranged from about $50,000 to as much as $180,000 in some cases. Many of the engineers received amounts of roughly 80 to 100 or 120,000 in shares, said the people, who asked not to be identified. The perk was presented by managers as a reward for high performers. A representative for the Cupertino, California-based company declined to comment. Apple is waging a talent war with companies in Silicon Valley and beyond, with Meta emerging as a particular threat. Meta has hired about 100 engineers from Apple in the last few months, but it hasn't been a one-way street. Apple has also lured away key Meta employees. The two companies are likely to become fierce rivals in augmented and virtual reality headsets and smartwatches, with both planning major hardware releases over the next 2 years. Meta, meanwhile, has stepped up its efforts to poach engineering talent from Apple's augmented reality, artificial intelligence, software, and hardware engineering divisions. The social media giant, which operates Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, has dangled significant salary increases as it looks to refocus around hardware and the so-called metaverse. A talent drain also hit other areas, including Apple's self-driving car team. The company needs to maintain its engineering prowess as it works on several next-generation devices, including the car, VR, and AR headsets, and the future versions of iPhone. At the same time, Apple's drumbeat to return to the office has jarred some employees, leading to engineering defections. Though the company has delayed its deadline for staff to come back, is taking a harder line on in-person work than some of its technology peers.
Fair enough. So if you do well, you get money?
Get money!
Isn't that how jobs normally work? Raspberry Pi. 2 new devices just went live on the International Space Station.
Whoa!
The International Space Station is connected a new Raspberry Model 4B units to run experiments from 500 student programs. 2 of the Raspberry Pi units recently launched for a space mission on the International Space Station. That's a bit redundant. A space mission on the International Space Station. I mean, what else are they going to do?
Mars mission.
And now in action, in phase 2 of the education-focused European Astro Pi Challenge. We last read about this. This is through ZDNet. Last read about this in the space-hardened Raspberry Pi unit dubbed Astro Pi in September, and they launched from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in December as part of Expedition 66 on Dragon cargo spacecraft on top of SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. The Astro Pi units are part of a project run by the European Space Agency for the Earth-focused Mission Zero and Mission Space Lab. The former allows young Python programmers to take humidity readings on board the ISS, while the latter lets students run various scientific experiments on the space station using its sensors. The Astro Pi boards consist of Raspberry Pi 4 Model B with 8GB of RAM, include a Raspberry Pi high-quality camera, one of Google's Coral machine learning accelerators, a color and luminosity sensor, and a passive infrared sensor. ESA's Expedition Mahua A German materials scientist and engineer set up the AstroPi units this month. These new units replace Ed and Izzy. AstroPi pair have been on the ISS since 2015 when the first AstroPi challenge was launched. The units have been powered by a Griffin power adapter connected to an ISS AC power inverter or USB port on a crew laptop and operate without a keyboard, monitor or mouse. They're configured to begin processing without crew interaction. They're connected to the joint station LAN network via Ethernet cable. The new AstroPi units have yet to be named and the task has been left to youngsters. We're looking forward to seeing the amazing experiments this year's AstroPi mission lab teams will perform on new hardware and what they'll discover about life on Earth and in space. The AstroPi units needed to pass the ESA and NASA's safety gate process, which includes a vibration test to ensure they can sustain launch conditions, a thermal test to ensure the device's operating temperature doesn't exceed 45 degrees Celsius, and a test for sharp edges for crew safety, electromagnetic emissions, and susceptibility tests and power consumption tests. ESA selected 502 teams from 800 teams who applied for the second phase of the mission to help them write programs for the experiments. Teams using machine learning received Coral Machine Learning Accelerator, while teams experiments using infrared photography receive red optics filter. I guess you don't think about that, having to survive all those vibrations from launch and stuff. Like, it's not something...
Yeah.
Which, lucky it's a solid-state device, so I wouldn't have an issue with that, but...
If they're going to let the kids name, it'll probably be Astro McAstro Face.
That'd be... well, the last one was... What was the last one? Ed and Izzy or something? Ed and Izzy. It could have been worse than Ed and Eddie, I suppose.
Ed and Eddie.
Itchy and
We should also say that the James Webb Space Telescope is up and it's completely folded out and ready for 20 years of service because the rocket that took it up there did such a good job that they're going to get 20 years out of it when they thought they might get a bit less.
Well, they thought they were only going to get 5 years out of the Hubble and they got, 30 years or 25 years or something out of that, so...
This one's only got enough fuel for 20 years if everything went perfect.
Yeah, they say that, but they don't really know, because look at that orbiter thing that's out the other side of Pluto now, and it was supposed to have been dead 10 years ago.
Yeah. And the rovers and stuff on Mars.
Yeah, well...
They were supposed to be dead years ago.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, I don't think they know, honestly. They don't know what conditions do to what. So...
One way to find out.
But, yeah, my only slight concern is you're allowing a device to read all the sensors on the space station for public access.
Yeah. What could happen if they hacked it?
Not quite sure if that's ideally the thing to be doing, but okay.
They're all read-only.
Yeah. Till somebody finds a way.
Scammers in a few big Texas cities have been putting fake QR codes on parking meters to trick people into paying the fraudsters. Parking enforcement officers recently found stickers with fraudulent QR codes on pay stations in Austin, Houston, and San Antonio. San Antonio police warned the public of the scam on December 20, saying that people attempting to pay for parking or using those QR codes may have been directed to a fraudulent website and submitted payment to a fraudulent vendor. Similar scams were then found at Austin and Houston. The fake QR codes reportedly directed people to a quick pay parking website at the domain passportlab.xyz, which is now offline. It's not clear how many people, if any, were tricked into paying the fraudsters. We don't use QR codes at all for this very reason because they're easy to fake or place on the devices, Austin Parking Division manager said. And we heard from industry leaders that this would be a possibility. Austin accepts payments directly at the meter with coins or credit card or with the Park ATX mobile payment app. Houston officials found 5 meters with fake QR codes and removed the stickers. While the scam seems to have been centered in Texas, it could be repeated anywhere. If you see a QR code on parking meter, ignore it and make sure you pay the city directly.
Yeah, it was the same thing, Coke, and I remember when Coke first brought out the vending machines and had QR codes on them for about a week.
And that was it.
And then, hang on, we probably shouldn't do that. So, but one thing too, just to be wary of before we wrap up, I was on the phone with Aussie Broadband for several hours today trying to solve an issue we had. I could ring out from both my mobile and the work phone, but could not ring in. It would go straight to voicemail. Now the phone was set to simultaneous ring all devices. So even if one device wasn't working, it would be ring the other one or the other one. You know, there's multiple devices on it. So it was when they rang the phone number, it was supposed to ring in on multiple devices, and whichever ones were available would ring and you could answer it.
Yep.
What was happening was as soon as you would ring in, it would ring for a split second and go straight to voicemail.
Right.
What we discovered was that, well, what we knew already was that there was a intermittent mobile outage in the area, but it wasn't your traditional outage where you just phone doesn't operate and be done with it. What was actually happening was the phone was ringing for a fraction of or the mobile was ringing for a fraction of a second before it technically answered and then hung up. So what was happening on the main phone line was when it was ringing in, as soon as the mobile detected the call, it would technically answer the call and hang up straight away. But because it's answered the call, it would stop any of the other phones from ringing.
Oh, no.
And we spent ages trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Because when you actually rung the phone, it wouldn't ring long enough to know it was ringing. You just thought it was going straight to voicemail. But anyway, after 3 hours or something like that to tech support, we figured out, well, let's isolate every phone individually.
Yep.
And it wasn't until we took the mobile off the network or off the chain of devices that the problem went away. But even then, we couldn't figure out why, because it was happening so quickly. There was no indication that was the issue.
Crazy.
But the mobile would ring if you rung the mobile directly, but it wouldn't ring if it was being transferred from the trunk line.
Okay.
So that's something to be aware of. If you have a phone that's you're diverting simultaneously to multiple phones, and you have mobiles in that chain, very, 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 very rarely, but it does happen. The network freaks out and fails, and you can't. You have intermittent, like we're having today with the mobile intermittent service. But when it wasn't working, it was working enough to screw everything else up.
Gee.
So yeah, that was a whole lot of fun. The only time it's been really quiet lately, and today I'm glad it was really quiet because we didn't have a phone for so long that I'm kind of glad it was quiet so I didn't miss any calls.
Yeah.
So that was fun. So yeah.
You got any more stories?
No,
I'm finished.
I don't.
That's it.
I don't.
Alrighty, thanks for listening to the Aussie Tech Head Show, the first for 2022.
Yay!
Yay! We can be found at Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, and Coffee. Email us willowwarlock @aussietechheads.com.au and go to aussietechradio.com 24/7 playback of tech-related shows. See you next time.
Bye.